Hi everyone, I hope you are all well at the moment. This is just a brief summary of last week's Bible study at the University of New South Wales on the topic of conversion, and in particular on that infamous phrase, being born again. I think this phrase, being born again, is a phrase which makes a lot of Christians understandably uncomfortable. And I think this might be because they might have one of two models of being born again in mind. The first model, which I'm going to call the intellectual model of being born again, thinks of this as something that takes place exclusively in our hearts and minds, something that refers to giving our assent to a series of propositions. We might imagine that we are being presented with the Apostles' Creed as a contract, and we are invited to sign on the dotted line at the bottom, I believe. So that's the intellectual model of conversion, of being born again. A second model that we might have in mind is what we might call the moralizing model of conversion. Here, the paradigmatic example is that of the reformed drug addict who manages to kick their addiction and turn their life around. I think when John's gospel speaks of being born again, it couldn't have a more different model of conversion in mind. John's gospel uses this phrase, being born again, in the midst of a story about Jesus' encounter with a man named Nicodemus. Who was Nicodemus? Nicodemus, we are told, is a Pharisee, a leading member of the Pharisees, a religious and political party. Nicodemus is therefore a man with a lot of power and probably also a lot of wealth. Nicodemus comes to see Jesus by night. He doesn't come to see Jesus publicly. He comes to see Jesus secretly. Nicodemus, it seems, is a character being used to refer to a whole class of what we might call secret disciples of Jesus. People who were fascinated by Jesus' message, fascinated with this new Christian community that was emerging, but also people who were unwilling to fully commit to following Jesus, unwilling to publicly state their membership of this new community for fear of what it would cost them, knowing that their public proclamation of their commitment to following Jesus would lead to a loss of their power and privilege. So what does Jesus say to Nicodemus? Be born again, or be born from above. And as he clarifies his meaning a couple of verses later, be born of water and spirit, clearly referring to the act of baptism, an act which would signify one's public membership of the Christian community. So, Jesus' message to Nicodemus, to be born again, a message of conversion, is not an intellectualist message. It's not primarily something about what goes on in Nicodemus's hearts and minds. It's about where Nicodemus places his body, where he situates himself in the world, who he stands with, who he stands against. Will he stand with the poor and marginalized of the world, or will he continue to stand with the powerful and the privileged? Additionally, it's not a moralizing model of conversion. Nicodemus isn't being told to straighten up and fly right, buy a suit, and get a job. Nicodemus is being told that he needs to commit to following Jesus and commit to being part of this new community that is going to stand against the powers and principalities of this world. Nicodemus is being presented with a stark choice. Are you going to follow Jesus or stay where you are with your current power and privilege? The choice was given to Nicodemus, and the choice is also given to us today. I think it's for this reason that the theologian Johannes Baptist Metz refers to discipleship as class betrayal.